Welcome to The Alibi, a video reflecting on the defense of T. Cullen Davis 50 years later. We look back at the night that never left Fort Worth, on August 2, 1976. Priscilla Davis recalled the night began with a heaviness, describing the moment the gunman appeared and the horror that unfolded in her home. However, the physical evidence suggests a different chain of events that night in Fort Worth. The documented truth is far more brutal. Priscilla was shot in the garage. She chose flight, running for her life, and never witnessed the other attacks inside the house. Fight or flight is a biological command. Priscilla fled bleeding and terrified, collapsing outside. The images and scenes she later described were shaped by trauma, fear, and the terrible knowledge of what she lost. Memory is not a camera, it is a wound. While Priscilla ran, the house was silent. Andrea Wilborn had already been killed execution-style in the basement playroom. Stan Farr was shot in the garage after Priscilla fled. The gunman moved with purpose, left no fingerprints, and vanished. Half a century has passed since that night, 50 years of speculation and 2 acquittals. We return to the real beginning. A garage, a gunshot, a woman running, and a child already gone. This is the story of what happened in Fort Worth. On August 3, 1976, Fort Worth woke up to sirens and spreading rumors. A shooting, multiple victims, a child dead, a woman wounded, and a millionaire involved. The first police reports were confused and frantic. Officers found Priscilla Davis outside the garage, barely conscious, repeating, "He shot me. He shot Stan. He's still inside." The physical truth is simple. Priscilla was shot in the garage and immediately fled. She never witnessed the killings inside. Her memories of the event were shaped by trauma. The incident unfolded in stages. The gunman's sudden appearance, a brutal reality far simpler than initial reports, a silent purpose inside the house, and the shooter vanishing without a trace. Oil heir T. Cullen Davis emerged as the key suspect. Furious over his divorce from Priscilla, his temper and control issues made him likely. Davis denied involvement, claiming he was being framed. 2 competing narratives emerged. One suggested the vengeful husband was the killer. The other claimed chaotic evidence, and unreliable witnesses framed the rich man. Neither fully matched the physical evidence. Despite what seemed like clear-cut initial evidence and motive, Fort Worth was unconvinced, divided by the competing narratives. The first trial ended in a stunning not guilty verdict, as the physical evidence did not align with all claims. Priscilla Davis claimed she saw the gunman in a lit hallway, witnessed the horror, and heard her daughter cry out. However, her recollection was significantly shaped by trauma and fear following the attack. Priscilla Davis's early statements were fragmented and unclear. Initial memories included running and pain, but she did not initially recall the basement or seeing the shooter's face. Trauma rewrites memory, and rewritten memories become weapons in court. Detectives found a broken latch and footprints that didn't match. There was no physical evidence linking Cullen Davis to the scene. The investigation followed the popular narrative of a wealthy husband as the killer, not the actual evidence. 2 competing narratives tore Fort Worth apart: a vengeful millionaire or an unseen intruder. The controversial legal saga was widely covered, splitting the city with 2 different stories during the trials. The defense attacked Priscilla Davis's unreliable testimony and highlighted the competing narratives. They claimed a chaotic crime scene and unreliable witnesses, arguing their client was unfairly framed for the shooting. The gunman moved with purpose, leaving no fingerprints behind after the attack. The assailant vanished into the Fort Worth night, an absence of evidence that became a critical factor in the defense. The murder weapon was finally found 5 days after the shooting, despite extensive searches by police. The weapon lacked fingerprints or any link to the crime or the defendant, creating reasonable doubt. A pistol suddenly appeared in the grass on day 5, in an area previously searched thoroughly. No fingerprints or blood linked the gun to Cullen Davis. The weapon was logged as evidence despite these suspicious circumstances. Priscilla Davis was shot in the garage and immediately fled. She did not see her daughter or hear Andrea scream. Stan Farr was shot and died there. The shooter let Priscilla escape, contradicting the prosecution's theory. Andrea Wilborn was killed by a single, execution-style shot in the basement playroom. Her death occurred before Priscilla arrived and was shot, meaning Priscilla could not have seen or heard it, despite later memories. The shooter left no fingerprints and moved with clear purpose inside the Stonegate mansion. After the shooting, the assailant vanished into the night. The missing murder weapon further created reasonable doubt for the jury. The Fort Worth shooting split the city into 2 narratives: a vengeful millionaire killer or an unseen intruder and a chaotic crime scene. Both stories, despite their flaws, fueled the ensuing court battles. The Texas defense team attacked the unreliable witness testimony and the lack of physical evidence. They argued their wealthy client was being unfairly framed, seeing the prosecution's case as built on emotion, not facts. The successful defense focused on Priscilla Davis's inconsistent testimony and the competing narratives. They highlighted the lack of physical evidence, arguing that the case was built on emotion, which ultimately led to the acquittals. The legal saga created a legacy of pervasive doubt in Fort Worth. 2 separate acquittals failed to contain the full truth, and the controversial case remains a dark part of the city's history. The defense lawyer identified cracks in the prosecution's case, including Priscilla Davis's evolving memory, lack of physical evidence, and contradictions in the timeline and shooting pattern, leading to reasonable doubt. The alibi was a critical defense point for T. Cullen Davis, who claimed he was being framed for the Stonegate shooting. His denial and the missing murder weapon contributed to the, quote, not guilty verdict in the first trial. The first murder trial concluded with a stunning not guilty verdict. Despite seemingly clear initial evidence, competing narratives and physical evidence that didn't perfectly align with all stories created reasonable doubt. After his acquittal in the first murder trial, T. Cullen Davis was arrested again in 1978. This time, the charge was a failed murder-for-hire plot targeting a judge presiding over his divorce. Davis's second arrest in 1978 was for a failed murder-for-hire plot. The target of the plot was a judge involved in his ongoing divorce case, an arrest that followed his first murder acquittal. The failed murder-for-hire plot was revealed by an audio taping, leading to Davis's 1978 arrest. The target was the judge in his divorce, and this new charge followed his initial murder acquittal. T. Cullen Davis faced a second trial for bribery connected to the failed murder-for-hire plot targeting the divorce judge. Despite the circumstances, he was again found not guilty. In 1976, T. Cullen Davis also faced a federal tax evasion trial. The charges included failure to file tax returns, underreporting income, concealment of assets, and willful evasion using corporate entities. T. Cullen Davis's legacy includes acquittals in 2 sensational trials, the Stonegate murder and the murder-for-hire plot, and a separate federal tax evasion trial in 1976. The legal saga deeply divided Fort Worth. Davis was acquitted in 2 highly controversial trials, the Stonegate murder and a murder-for-hire plot. He also faced a tax evasion trial. This series of events tore the city of Fort Worth apart. The first trial's not guilty verdict was stunning, fueled by competing narratives that divided the city. The controversial legal saga continued, with 2 separate acquittals failing to provide closure or contain the whole truth. The Stonegate saga began nearly 50 years ago, marked by 2 murder trials and 2 competing narratives. This half-century of speculation and courtroom battles deeply affected Fort Worth. The Stonegate Mansion still stands in Fort Worth, a tangible reminder of the controversial case that remains part of the city's history. Half a century later, speculation continues. The key lessons from the trials include how trauma can distort witness testimony, how physical evidence rarely aligns perfectly with all narratives, and how reasonable doubt can lead to a stunning acquittal. Thank you for watching The Alibi, a video reflecting on the T. Cullen Davis murder trials.